Trevor Langley was a reporter for Southern Television, known for his appearances on the flagship 6 o'clock evening news, out on location, interviewing the man on the street. His role saw him covering a mix of light-hearted feel-good stories and heavier material, and though his talented pet sections were always a favourite, he'd also been one of the first journalists on the scene the night of the Leybridge church murders and subsequent riots. In 1974, he'd appear nationwide on the David Nixon Show as part of a trick, switching places with Melvin Hayes, and later that same year, Langley's popularity and easy manner saw him spin off into his own series. Titled Langley's People, it was a travelogue across Sussex and Hampshire, interviewing slightly eccentric folk about their hobbies and jobs, and trying his hand at local customs. Perhaps most famously, he suffered a broken ankle during a downhill pumpkin chase. But as 70s Britain became increasingly fascinated with the supernatural and occult, Langley's People would itself spin off into a series capitalising on that fad, with each episode centering on a different paranormal subculture. This would be Trevor Langley's last on-screen role, bringing an untimely end to his public career. From an era when networks routinely wiped their tapes, and having never been repeated, no surviving footage of Langley's final series exists. But what we do have are some off-air pictures, literally just from a viewer who had the foresight to snap some of his television set, plus a handful of production photos, and even a partial transcript. Each episode covered a single topic, reflected in its title. This series began with Langley's psychics, followed by Langley's vampires. Beyond what you're seeing here, very little is known about these half hours, which define the phrase lost media. The third show centred on lake monsters, while aside from its title, no information is currently available about episode 4, Langley's Spacemen. As well as interviews, the show utilised puppets and stop-motion animation to explain its concepts. As will be instantly recognisable from the trademark style, these sections were produced by Brian Pilton, an animator best known for his work on children's show The Clothbods. The bulk of surviving archive material emanates from the fifth and final show, Langley's Witches. In the first half, Langley meets with a coven. They claim to be healers who merely put energy into the world, balancing out negative with positive. However, one witch, identifying herself as Nan Beatles, talks about an issue they'd had with a property developer who planned to build a housing estate on the local allotments. In response, the coven held a ritual on said allotments, and according to the transcript, changed his mind after that he did, burned down his own home, and when they swept away the ashes, they caught him trying to plant saplings there. Part 1 ends, via Pilton's puppetry, with a simplified history of witchcraft through the ages. Back from an ad break to a close-up of a toad in a jar, and Langley's now been joined by a number of witches, one of whom claims the creature to be a former lover, a salesman she turned into a toad after betraying her. By all accounts, the thing was capable of human speech. However, Langley was unable to tease any words from it. After a brief panel discussion on modern witchcraft, where they were joined by a vicar, Langley boasted a television first, a ritual of transmogrification, conducted live in the studio, It's here the vicar excused himself, announcing he would pray for the souls of all involved. With 70s broadcast regulations prohibiting the transmission of genuine occult ceremonies, the rest of the crew were ushered out of the studio, with a locked-off camera staying focused on Langley, who described what he was seeing for viewers. At first there was a mention of them disrobing, and of a large shape being drawn on the floor. Having to shout to be heard over the chanting, and now white as a sheet, the presenter let out a scream of terror, stumbling backwards, completely out of frame. "What I'm witnessing," said Langley, "we could never show in your homes." Then came a series of distant, wet sounds off camera, followed by the much closer sound of a man vomiting. After the taping, colleagues report him drinking alone in the studio bar, before leaving without a word. The series had been commissioned for 6 episodes, but Langley's Witches would turn out to be the finale. This 23-minute show was the last that anyone heard from Trevor Langley. Sometime in the mid-80s, one of the Sunday tabloids carried the front page headline, "Mad Trevor Spotted." Accompanying the article was a photograph of a man, purported to be the ex-presenter of Langley's People, now living in the woods, and wearing a suit and tie made of grass, twigs and leaves. Langley couldn't be traced for the televised 50 years of Southern reunion, with Fred Dinage simply saying of his former station mate, "Wherever he is, we wish him well." As of this video, he still hasn't surfaced, and all I can do is echo Fred's statement.